Should be online now.
It's happening. It was cheap training, so it's one for the first.
All right, kia ora everyone, and welcome to the Waimāero Fendalton-Waimairi-Harewoood Community Board Meeting for the 12th of June 2023. To start, we're just going to stand for our karakia, and we'll have the words on the board. Yeah, perfect. Excellent. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kiota, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi a te anga te ata kura, he tia, he huka, he hauhunga, ti hei mauri ora. Thank you, everyone. So for item 1, we have apologies. I believe none have been received. But I just want to make a note that Linda is here. She's just with us on Zoom. And then for item number 2, declarations of interest. Yes, Trish, you have one for, what item is that?
It is item 12, relating to the Bengali Association application.
Great, and so you know the deal. You'll just move back from the table when we get to that item. Do we need to move in second? And then for item number 3, confirmation of the previous minutes. Thank you, Jason. Thanks for moving. Do we have a seconder? Is that Nicholas? Thank you, Nicola. I'll just wait. So all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? No, carried. Moving on to item number 4, we have public forum. So we have 2 public forums today. And I just want to make a note before we start with public forum, is public forum is 5 minutes. That includes questions. And with a public forum, the board is not in a position to make any decisions, but we can see what we can do about getting more information from staff going forward. So we'll have a timer on the screen just so you're aware of what your time is in case you get close to that 5-minute mark. And we have Michael Henstock. We could welcome you to the table, and you're welcome to take us through what you have for public forum today.
Good afternoon. Yeah, we've got a presentation. Aidan. You're going to flick through it, Aidan? Yep. I'll just give you a wee thumbs up. So this is about, I've talked to the board before about children's athletics at Fendalton Park. We established a track, which is great. And we started activities a couple of years ago. So we've had 2 seasons on Fendalton Park. So here's the kids. You can see it's pretty basic in terms of the throwing. And what I want to talk to you today is about taking the next step to get permanent overlay. So click it through, Aidan. Yeah, there's more kids, happy running kids. Keep going. So happy we got at the front. So you can see that it's kind of sub-op. It's great. People are loving it, absolutely loving being at the park. You can see it's suboptimal for high jump and things. You can see that there's a little bit of mondo that we've rolled out in front of the pads there, but it's dangerous in the wet. So Aidan, this one, yeah, again, same thing. Next slide. And we've got a temporary pit, which is great. And the children love it. Next slide. Yeah, more. Yeah, just flick through that one, Aidan. So we started off at storage with the rugby club, and they said, yeah, you can keep your gear here all year. And then they did a 180 at the end of the season when after we cleaned up their club rooms, which is an absolute mess. And so it's all right, okay. So we had to find somewhere else. So next, and thanks to the lovely Lorraine McLeod, absolute legend. She said, oh, we've got an old shed where we stored our dirt. You can go in there. We said, okay, let's have a look. So we had a look, and next slide, Aidan. And this is what it was like. Pretty, yeah, just to the end. Do you know where I'm talking about? Just at Canterbury Bowls. So this is where they used to keep dirt. They don't use it anymore. So next slide. Yeah, it was pretty rough in there. We got in, we cleaned it out. And next slide. And now all our gear fits in there really nicely, and we can have committee meetings in the Bowls Canterbury boardroom, fantastic. And Lorraine's just been absolutely brilliant. Next slide. So there's the track. It's it's a 300-metre track, which is fine for children. You can run 200, 100. You can see the 100 markings are down parallel to the pathway. Perfectly adequate for Medbury and Fendalton to go there as well and use their facilities, which I've indicated in the past they're quite keen to do once we get a bit better. So next slide. So again, the track, fantastic when it's had a few ups and downs with the contractors, but by and large, it's been pretty good. The inside ring gets worn down because members of the public train on it. They go there and they use it. So it's activated that space in the summer where there was no activation previously. So next slide, Aidan. Yeah, more track. Yeah, next one. Yeah, so what we want to do today is just talk to you about the construction of 2 throwing circles and a cage and long jump pit and a synthetic run-up. So it's more permanent overlay that makes it usable, and 10 by 50 metre high jump pad. So next slide. So there's where we were asking to look at. You can see the high jump pad at the top and the 2 throwing circles in the apex of the track. So next slide. There's the long jump pit. That's the guy sticking out. Fantastic. Next slide. That's what it looks like at the moment. It looks a little bit manky. That's why we want to upgrade it and get a proper cover for it. But it's perfectly usable. It has been, but it just needs to go to the next stage. Next slide. Yeah, same thing. Next one. Yeah, so 40-metre runway, concrete base with just working out the overtop. It'll be a green one. Next slide. And a concrete rim around the long jump pit. Next slide. And next slide. So there's an example of Burnside School. It's kind of really low impact. That's a really long run up because there's another long jump pit at the other end. So it'd be kind of half that length, but green, that run up. Next slide. Throwing circles, you can see in the top of the apex. If you go to the next slide, you can see there's a dead ball line with the current markings. So there's no impact. I think the recession is about 1.5 or 3 metres, I think, from the end of what you have to have. So there's plenty of space there for a concrete pad to go down, or 2 of them, 2 circles. You can see where the track goes round there. So it's just on the inside. Next slide. Again, that's circle 2. So 1 on each side. So very low impact. And if needs be, you can rip them out pretty quick. Next slide. There's Burnside School again. I think ours will be a bit prettier than that one. That's pretty ugly. And we have a cage that can be taken down at the end of the season. So I think, Jamie, you might have had some questions about people getting hit. We mark off the area and the cages, and the little ones don't throw it very far anyway. You'd have to be pretty slow moving. Next slide. And the high jump, sorry?
Unless you've got that Tom Moultrie.
No, as you see him, it's amazing how he can throw that thing. So the high jump pad, it's just, we're thinking just outside the tree line at the top there. Again, that's just a pad with the same covering as the long jump run up. The next slide. That's a terrible mock-up that I did, so probably with that. Next slide. So there's an example of Burnside, what we're talking about. So this provides safety and all-weather. It means you can run long jump, high jump in the rain, etc. So next slide. So what we're asking for is to initiate the process for constructing the permanent overlay. Lease, do we need a lease? Advise, we need a lease, and advise on the next steps with the Parks and Recs team and sports team. And if there's an opportunity for council funding assistance, that would be great, because it has activated that whole area, and the schools will use it as well. So in our view, it's really popular. People love it. We can grow membership on the basis of better facility. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Any questions?
Oh, thank you, Michael. Yes, just a quick question.
Yeah, just quickly, with the sand pits, how do you keep cat out?
It doesn't say. We dig it over, and there hasn't been any. Well, not that we know of. But all athletics, all parks around in schools, pretty much the same.
Right, so they just go to people's home gardens.
So I think they're pretty well domesticated, Aaron. So, yes.
All right. So from here then, it's probably about getting staff getting engaged with staff and seeing them do a report to advise on what the next steps are. Yeah, so we can engage that with staff and then keep you in the loop.
Cool. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for the update. It's fantastic.
Brilliant. So good. Well, you two are racing, remember?
Yeah.
They have not-
He's just had a tip 3 done. I'm challenging you.
This is the time. This is the time to do it.
Get him this month.
And if he remembers it.
Chicken.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right.
Waiting for this moment.
Okay, moving on to the next forum, we have the other Michael Patterson. Hi, Michael. Yeah, if you want to come to the table. So you've got 5 minutes again, and that includes questions. With the timer, we're just going to have to flip through it every now and again just because of the live stream. Otherwise, the people online only see the timer.
I doubt I'll take all my time.
Okay, right.
So why I've come before you today is I've had some discussions with Sam, and the opportunity to submit to the previous city plan ourselves. So first of all, okay, I'll back the truck up a bit. I'm a bit flustered today. I lost an uncle on Friday, and I've got all this other stuff going on. But anyway, the deal is that so I am an owner at the Commodore Hotel with my brothers, and we've been there for over 50 years. And so that part of our city is very important to us, and we are blessed to live there, right? So I live there with my family, and what I'm coming to talk to you today about is I'm concerned about cycling down Memorial Avenue, because as lovely as the Wings to Wheels is, and everything else, there's that path of desire, which is to ride down Memorial Avenue, which the most direct route, which people that live and work in our part of Christchurch will take. And, you know, like in a world of hard cycleways, we being myself and the airport company stood before the council, the last city plan, and proposed that an amendment to some light amendment to parking, and possibly some shared paths like around Burnside Park and that as well, a footpath being dual purposed for cycling too, and just bring the, you know, if we could see a change in the parking behaviours down Memorial Avenue, and I'm not just talking for those people that use the Scotchman's car park and avoid the fees of the airport, also talking about people that live and work and park on Memorial Avenue for a full day. One of my sons was knocked off his bicycle, someone opening a door, and that person worked in the technology park. So that person left their car at 8 o'clock in the morning for the entire day when they walked through the technology park to work, you know. I think that, you know, my grandparents lived on Memorial Avenue, and people need to be able to park on Memorial Avenue, but I think it's that lazy parking that should be stopped. I think if we could pull back on that, then it would make it a safer corridor into the city. Wouldn't it be lovely to have a city, and I've talked to the airport company about this, where people would actually rent a more meaningful e-bike, not one of these lousy flipping toys that people use, but a nice e-bike to ride the city on a nice day. You know, it'd be a lovely place to land, but it's that ride down Memorial Avenue, which has been described. I know that that there was a description and stuff of it was called the Valley of Death. One of the cycle advocates said about Memorial Avenue. That was just, and it's really around the parking. Yeah. So I have engaged with council staff in the past, and I'd like to ask an outcome of that happens again, and just bring it to your attention. That's pretty much all I've got to say at the moment. And the only other thing I'm a little bit concerned about is on a Saturday morning in the winter, there's a lot of people that'll park there and take little Johnny across the road, across Memorial Avenue to Rugby, and it's 60 kilometres an hour. You would wonder if perhaps like a 40 a la the schools for that period of time when the kids are playing rugby on the Saturday mornings. Could be a good thing too, because you know a car will shoot down at 60 kilometres an hour, obeying the law, but it's actually too fast for little Johnny and his mum trying to cross Memorial Avenue at 9 o'clock for rugby. That's it, really.
Yeah, no, thank you, Michael. We've got like 20 seconds for some questions. So
Just one thing, I mean, thanks very much, Michael, for coming in. It's been really, really useful for us. What would be good is to get the transport team to look at this, but I think, because you mentioned Wheels to Wings, and there are massive challenges for that, and one of the reasons was it wasn't community-led design. And so I think having you in such a significant business down Memorial Ave, it would make sense to be involved in what we can look at, because when we've wandered through it, it's not about getting rid of all the car parking. It's about, you know, basically cheap steps to make cycling reasonable down there, which is kind of what we want.
Look, as a cyclist, I think you can negotiate the odd car, you know, but a continual stream of them is dangerous. And you see vehicles parked there, and this park is so long that the leaves are building up behind the wheels. You know, people have, you know, because families do have a number of cars, you know. And also I'm mindful too that I have to be pulled into line as the hotelier there, because you know, my guests will sometimes choose to park on the road, and we'll actually go and say to people, look, there's ample parking inside, you know, so we'd be pulled into line as well, you know.
Yeah. So can we have that as some actions? And particularly, I thought we'd asked already for the 40k speed lights around. I'm sure, yeah, so maybe we could get that followed up as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what this means is we'll get engaged with staff to get some advice on what are some options to explore around making, what would it be, making Memorial Ave safer in terms of biking, linking it back to around Wings to Wheels.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've had Lynette out there with us as well, so they'll be well aware of, I think she may even have some concept plans.
Right.
Clearly there's going to be an opportunity too when from Berea's Road down to Clyde Road is ultimately widened at some stage. There must be an opportunity there as well.
Oh, it's rather than.
See, and there is a precedent set already. There's 2 hour parking down by the Fendalton Mall.
Right. Yeah. So it's about the behaviour of.
Yeah, there's 2 hour parking around there, you know, and clearly that's to stop the students and staff that work at the mall, you know, just dumping their cars there all day, you know.
Yeah. And the other thing was about the speeding. So that's something that we can check in, because at the moment there's been a lot of there's a school there's basically been a lot of streets and a lot of road around Christchurch where the speeding is changing. It's getting reduced. So we'll see about whether or not Memorial Ave is something, at least patches of Memorial Ave, where those speeds will be changed, and whether the areas that you're meaning will be included in that reduced speed zone. That's advice that we can see from staff.
Yep. Thank you.
Cool.
Great. Thanks, Michael. All right. Yeah. Okay, moving on to item 5. And now all those in public forum, you're welcome to go at any time, by the way. You don't stay for the whole meeting. So item 5, we have quite a few deputations. So deputations are 10 minutes, and that 10 minutes includes questions. So first for the deputations is we have Tony Hunter. Yes, Tony, yeah.
Here we are again. Just as a point of interest, about half of your public behind me are residents of Chateau Drive, which is what I'm going to talk about for a few minutes. I did today circulate something to Marianne, and I trust that she has circulated it to yourselves. So I don't want to go through that line by line or word for word, but I would like the time to go through and emphasise the logic which I have used on behalf of the residents who are wanting these 8 silver birch trees removed from
the cul-de-sac end of Chateau Drive. The council arborist has put a report to you, which I'm sure you've all read, and he has recommended that 3 of these trees are in fact removed. I'd like to talk about those just very briefly. Tree number 1 happens to be right outside my own place, and within the document which I sent you, in Appendix 2, you can see the damage that's done to the curb and channel. Now, I'm not totally naive in terms of what works cost, having spent 16 years on the board of SICON a few years ago. So I'm fairly familiar with what it costs when you're actually repairing drainage, curb and channel and the likes. But clearly that's quite extensive damage. Tree number 2 was a tree outside one of our residents where the root has actually pushed the pavement up approximately 120 millimetres, which has created quite a hazard for anybody that's walking around that section of pathway. And that's shown by way of pictures in Appendix 3 there. And I've used a very primitive level and an H, which just tangibly shows you the degree to which these roots are simply pushing up through the asphalt. And it's been progressive, okay? Tree number 3, I haven't shown specifically, but it's probably a tree which the arborist has said, let's be proactive and remove it because it's going to be a problem shortly. So those are the 3 trees that he's recommended taken out. What I've proposed in this submission, when you look carefully, is that there's at least 2 other trees which are equally as bad in terms of the damage they're doing as tree number B. So on the plan that you've got, tree number B, which as I've said, has got pushed up the pavement by about 110, 120 millimetres. Tree number E and tree number F have done exactly the same. And I've tried to capture that in pictures, which are in Appendix 5. That's tree number E, and also in further appendix in Appendix 1, which is tree number F. So both of those trees have done probably, by any sense of comparison, about the same sort of damage which has been done by tree number B, which the arborist has suggested be removed. So we had 3, we've now got 5, we've got 3 others. One of those 3, tree number D, has been pushed up the pavement, and somewhere the council has provided a patch to actually fix the problem. And all they have done is created a bridge of sorts, which has patched over a raised section of asphalt, which has actually created even more of a problem than what it probably was prior to being patched. And one of our residents, when I finish this, will actually talk to you about the impact of somebody having a major fall on that stretch because of what's there. So we're left with 2 trees, and 2 trees out of the 8 arguably have less minor damage than all of those others. But it's very clear if you look at the pavement around those trees, the damage has started, and it's only a matter of time. I can't tell you how long, but it might be a year, it might be 2 years before we're sitting here again, potentially saying, hey, you know, there's a major problem here. So look, as a group, we believe that all 8 trees should be removed. And if the council so wishes, because of policy or whatever else, to put other trees back in, which are more suitable, fine. Just to put this into context, I'm sitting here on behalf of people that are behind me and others who couldn't make tonight. We surveyed everybody in the cul-de-sac end of the street. There's 22 households. We had 18 replies, so there's 4 who didn't. Of the 4 who didn't, one's an absentee owner, one speaks a little English and therefore didn't reply, and there's 2 renters. So basically we've had 100% of the residents reply who will probably have skin in the game to see what happens with these trees. Of those 18, 93%, as I said, had some sort of trip or fall due to the unevenness and of the pavement, you know. One or two have had quite major problems. Two, 93% of those who responded, so 93% of the 80-odd%, have said people within their household have either got allergies, people who visit have got allergies, which are brought on by the presence of pollen from these trees. Even visitors who come and visit, some of those within the street, within 24, 48 hours of visiting, they're actually out getting medication, antihistamines, or the likes to deal with them. It's not good, okay? So look, in terms of the way forward, you know, our view is, and the thrust of the submission is, we'd like to see all 8 trees go. We think there's strong, compelling argument for 6. Whatever the council has to do with resource consents, consideration, anything else, why not go 8 and be done with it? Because otherwise you're going to have us sitting here in another year's time, or maybe 2, and saying these 2 trees that you left behind, they need to now go as well. So look, in terms of the way forward, that's where we see things are at. I'd maybe like to call on, I think, Steve, do you want to make a comment? Steve?
Oh, sorry, we've got 3 minutes left on the clock, but Steve, you're welcome to come up because you've got 3 minutes left.
Now, if I can just refer to Appendix 4, there's a section there which is actually the patch which was done on tree number D, and Steve can just very briefly tell you what happened.
We live next to trainnet number 39. Quite often my wife and I are going out for walks. There was a day probably about 18 months ago when my wife went out for a walk by herself. She walked across the road down the footpath, and it was quite a bright day, but I think with the fact the footpath is almost disguised, especially when you get the dappled sun coming through the leaves and things, she couldn't see that raised bit of ground, and she fell quite badly. She did need an operation, she needed rehabilitation, physiotherapy and the like. So, you know, it really is quite hazardous for people, especially when, you know, some of the people in the area are, you know, getting a little bit older now. And yeah, it's not easy walking through there. So.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Anybody else want to?
Pass on that I had reason to go to Waimāero and Brain Injury Trust, which is one of our neighbours. We see the residents frequently being walked around in the area. The manager, Scott Dean, said to, I passed on what we were going to today, and he said, yeah, they're well aware of it, and they have to be very careful with the residents, wheelchairs, all that sort of thing, because some of those, you know, you could tip at it, especially the single ones going along in their electric chairs. So it's just another part of the community that wanted to be heard as well.
Yeah, thank you. You've got 1 minute left, but I'm
Anybody else?
Yeah.
I was out mowing the bird one day and tripped on one of the roots and face planted on top of the lawnmower, which could have been quite disastrous. And it was, I'm on outside, it's tree number,
Tree number B.
yes, it's quite, the footpath comes up like that, and it's actually opened up, so it was very easy to trip on, so it could have been very nice.
I know we're running out of time, but I noticed that the arborist has said there's about $7,500 to take those trees out, stump grind and replace them. I just happened, before I was aware of that, I got a quote from one of the contractors that do some of your work, and they gave me a quote to cut the trees down and do stump grinding of 4,800. So it's cheaper than what your arborist said. That didn't include any planting. But look, at the end of the day, I think the residents there, and as you see, there's a very big majority. They're passionate about it. They're going to be back here, getting in your ear time and time again if we don't get some sort of satisfaction. And like all of these things, it's all very well to sit here and moan and groan and thump the table, but part of our survey that we did, our internal survey, we asked the question, said, would you be prepared to potentially contribute financially if that's what's needed to get this over the ground? And pretty much without exception, the answer was yes. I do have a number. I'm not going to share it with you, but I will say as much as that, given that I think the bulk of the responsibility here is definitely with the council, then what we may be prepared to contribute might get the balance over the line. But I don't think any of us here, both yourselves and our neighbours behind me, want to be here in 12 months, 24 months' time, re-litigating what we're going through now. So it seems to me a sensible, pragmatic sort of a solution is maybe what's required. I know there may be issues with resource consent. That's your specialists, your people who can deal with that. It's not something that we necessarily can add any value to, but we certainly want to engage further. That is necessary.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tony, and to everyone who have come along today. It's wonderful to obviously support Tony, but it just again highlights the passion and the commitment that you feel behind this issue. And thank you for sharing your story. So we've got some questions. Yeah, that's fine. We'll have Sam and then James.
Yeah, hey, thanks for that. It's a really good submission and makes it really, really clear. So I'm just thinking, although James is local councillor and I've got one in Waimāero in a similar situation, the issue we've got is that we can get rid of some, but not necessarily all under the existing resource consent. So what we have really basically, we have a global consent, which means that for some stuff it triggers it so we can remove them basically straight away. But for some of the others, we can't. How would you feel about, I should say, so because we can't, the staff are currently working through a new consent for a range of issues which currently can't allow for trees to be removed. How would you feel about, and I appreciate it may not be the answer you want, removing the trees that we can legally under the consent today, and then coming back, potentially coming back when we've got this new global consent that would allow us to consider the removal of the others? Does that make sense? Sorry, it's a very long-winded question.
Sounds to me like it's sort of like we'll give you 2 or 3 and hopefully you'll get out of our hair and maybe you'll have forgotten about it. Well,
no, I'm sorry if I'm not trying to portray it at all. What I'm saying is, how
many can you actually legally remove under your current consent that is applying at the moment?
The ones that recommended. 3. Yeah. So I guess where I'm getting to is, and I agree with you, I share your frustration, is if we can legally get rid of some today, would you like that to a point, or are we best to leave it all and see if this new consent works in 6 months' time?
Well, this has been going on for well over a year, possibly closer to 18 months already. I mean, any trees that go is fine, but let me be very clear that in volunteering or being asked to talk to this today, the neighbours in the street are very, very clear in terms of expectation. That all of those 8 trees go somewhere or other. That is their expectation. Now, you can refer to your resource consents, and as I said very briefly, I'm well aware of the problems that resource consents can generate, but I also know that within the structure of the resource consenting process, there are ways and means in which the consenting process can be used to generally achieve the results required. Yeah. We're not talking about anything too drastic here. We're not talking about people who are going to be affected other than the people that are sitting behind me and the other half of the street who for various reasons couldn't be here tonight. So, we're not talking about something where somebody's going to get beaten up with because they've done the wrong thing. It's not a particularly sensitive, other than maybe for some council people who believe it's not being able to be done in total because of the rules in the rule book. I'm sure you've got people that know how to move this along.
Well, yeah, and I probably wasn't being clear. What I was saying was, where we've got a process underway, which they're telling me will take about 3 months, which means that situations like this won't likely arise again because we're getting a different consent, which means that actually it might speed these things up going forward. So
are you offering to take the 3 trees out and then we come back in 4 months' time and?
well, that's what I was trying to
the other
get.
5?
That's what I was trying to get to, and seeing what your comfort level is with that. But
Well, I personally, I can't speak for those behind me. I'm personally not comfortable with it because it just seems to me just putting off what, you know.
I guess, sorry, I'm not going to drag it on.
No,
Just one last thing.
yeah.
So I guess that's my challenge is, like, we obviously have a district plan which is set, which we have to operate within. I guess where I'm getting to is, would you be comfortable with a couple coming out now, knowing that we're going to try and change something to be able to avoid this problem in the future if it takes 3 or 4 months? I mean, it's either that or I guess we get to a point where we don't take any out today, and I'm not sure that's helpful either. So I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from.
Well, I think not taking the 3 out that have been recommended. I know if you look at the photographs there, I mean, you know, the damage is only going to get worse.
Yep.
You know, you leave it 3 months, you leave it 4 months, you know, it's a progressive damage that's happening.
Did you go through the full process again, like the meetings and?
No, it wouldn't, but no, we wouldn't. And we can ask some of these questions when we get to the item.
That's been useful. Okay.
Yeah. But James, you've got.
Yeah, I wonder, and just, I know we're not actually dealing with the item now, but it just might help with this. Though too, I think that we do have the ability to have those 2 parts done in one. And my hope would be might have some wording, which we'll be working on before the meeting, which could essentially address these ones, but then also give approval in principle to do the remainder of them. Which means that you don't need to go through the whole rigmarole again, but the idea would be that we could do it in one fell swoop, so we can essentially approve the remaining removal of the trees under the policy when that comes into effect. My question really was though, and I think everyone here, you know, has real empathy for you because we've seen this. We know the ongoing OPEX costs with the repairs to the footpath. We know there's also a cost. You know, to your own time and sanity with dealing with this. And also there's a cost to staff then for that because they are going to have to deal with that time and time again. So I think, you know, if you're looking at it purely from a cost saving perspective there, it makes a heck of a lot of sense to do this once, do it properly. The other thing though, from what I gather, might give a bit more scope around the removal of the trees is the health impacts that it has on people. And you did allude to that. And I wondered if you would be comfortable or would have the ability to get a medical certificate or anything like that from anyone in the community that we could then submit in to perhaps add weight to that process. For
how many do you want?
Trees.
You know, I mean, that's the question. How many do you want? You know, about half a dozen medical certificates from residents in the cul-de-sac, either from they directly or from family members who visit. Who end up having to get onto medication because they've come to stay with their folks. If that's what tips it over, just tell us. I'm sure that will, you know, we might be back in tomorrow. So hopefully, I mean, I played down that because it's a very objective area and played up the damage that it's doing, the cost that's, you know, eventually going to come back on the council, you know, but.
Is that something then, Tony, because I agree with you, but it sounds like the new policy will be a bit more binary than that in the sense that it will either be, if there are medical certificates, that gives more scope for that. I guess what I'm asking is, would there be an ability for someone to get a medical certificate to say that this was contributing adversely to?
93% of those respondents said they had issues that were exacerbated by, you know, being present in the street. And they knew that when they were away on holiday or, you know, in some cases, people have got holiday homes, they go away for Christmas or whatever, they come back, then within a very short time, you know, the issues with their asthmatic conditions are, you know, worsening because of just the environment.
So that is a very real component.
Very real, very real.
I appreciate that. And yeah, we really have some people on the street and things taking the time to control that.
Yeah.
Just
You already have a serious injury requirement operation, so not enough evidence. You're talking about mitigating the risk, let's have 3 trees there, but not removing the risk. And I think we've notified a couple of the concerns. There's accountability with health and safety issues. That's the issue. We want those trees gone. Can't afford more trees. next one, we still will.
Yeah.
How many does it take?
No, thank you. So we hear the message loud and clear. We see all of the support that you've got behind these about moving them from 3 to 8. The next step from here is just for us to get to that item where we can talk to our arborist about what's the step for us to meet the concerns that you've got. So so you don't get into a position where you keep coming back here.
And we've got some wording which should be to that effect as well.
Well, based on what is being done internally, if we could have something back in writing in terms of what we as residents need to be providing you by way of information to get this over the line. So you're within the scope of your rule book that's obviously controls what you can and cannot do with it. Then we will do everything we can to work with you to make sure that, we just get a sensible, logical result.
Fantastic, thank you. And I just want to say we appreciate all of the hard work that you've put into this already. It gets us to the point where we can ask the questions with our arborists to know what we've got to do to go from here. Thank you so much. Yeah.
We'll look forward to
So we'll
getting something back then.
Stay here when we get to that item. We've got a few more deputations to get through. Thank you so much, Tony. If you want to sit back, we'll go through the remainder of the deputations and you can wait till we get to the item. Great. All right. Item deputations by appointment. Next we have Neil from the football club. Hey, Neil. All right, so we've got 10 minutes for this as well, and that does include questions. So yeah, we're in your hands.
Kia ora. Firstly, thank you for this opportunity. I did have a presentation, but I understand that it has been circulated, so I'm quite happy to take that as read and just simply use our time to summarise our application and for you to have maximum time for Q&A. So
yeah, good.
Happy for that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, that's great. Look, FC 2011 Football Club is a leading sport club in the west of the city. And as such, we need fit for purpose facilities to support the growth of our game in our area. To that end, we need additional lights to meet the needs of our growing membership. A detailed lighting plan was commissioned in November 2021. And that is the kinetics report, which I understand also accompanied the presentation as well. And no doubt you've had the opportunity to have a look at that. Our application was reviewed in March of this year by council and provided to you with a recommendation to approve the application. Now, look, the impact on park neighbours has been deemed to be very minimal. And in fact, just one submission during the consultation was received that opposed or had concerns about the installation of this additional lighting. The lighting is some 320 odd metres from houses and faces inwards. So the impact on residents is pretty minimal. The lighting forms phase one of what is a larger vision for FC 2011 to have Avonhead Park as our home of football, but not only for football, but to also have a facility there which is a enhanced facility for the wider community. And I did also provide a brief presentation which supported our vision for that as well. So hopefully that will be read at some point. So we've identified Avonhead Park as our long-term home, which would include club rooms for us and also a community pavilion or meeting space for the local community. So we're planning towards that vision, and we understand council is supportive of that in principle. And as I said, this lighting application forms phase one of that long-term home vision. So our request is for the recommendation to be supported and that for you as a community board to approve it.
Great.
So very happy to take some questions.
Yep, you've got a bit of time. Any questions? No, great. Well,
Great, thank you.
Yeah, we're going to get to item 8 and we'll talk through it more with staff. But thank you so much.
Sure.
Thanks for the coming along and supporting your position on it. Thank
You're
you.
very welcome. Thank you.
All right, moving on to our next deputation by appointment, we have Russell Kidney.
Kitty.
Oh, Kitty, sorry.
Okay, my concern is the bus stops and the cost of the shelters. I understand that the bus stop that is currently on the south side of Harewood Road is going to stay there, and there's going to be a bus shelter built there. It doesn't mention it in here, but on the original plan it said it was going to be. I can't understand why there would be a bus shelter built there and another one just round the corner when it would be very easy to shift the bus shelter that's on the south side of Harewood Road now, shift it west about 150 metres. And one of the reasons they gave for not doing that was because it would take away parking. Well, there's about a 200-metre stretch there, and every day I would look at it 3 or 4 times a day, and today there was a maximum of 2 cars, and most of the time there's no cars there at all. And the other reason was they said it would interfere with the cycleway, proposed cycleway. But the current bus stop would interfere with the same cycleway, I'd imagine. Like, there's not much difference. What I'd like to know is the cost of what those bus shelters cost. You know, is it, anybody know?
That probably is a question for staff. Yeah, we can ask that question when we get to that item.
Yeah, it just seems ludicrous to have spend money on 2 bus shelters when you could just move one, and it would. Then also there's a piece here that's on 541. My driveway is on Woolridge Road. My address is Harewood Road. I live on the corner. But they say that over a 45-minute period, they had a maximum of 5 vehicles turning right. Well, I can't get out of my gateway sometimes because they're stacked up, and it's probably 7 vehicle lengths from the corner to my gateway, and it could be another 5 or 6 cars. That would even take it back past the 317 proposed bus stop here, outside 317. And there's only 14 houses on Woolridge Road. I know at either end there'll be a lot of use for bus stops there with the parks, but it's very spasmodic because they have Tuesday night and Saturday is probably busy times for the park. And by moving the bus stop west on the south side of Harewood Road, it would free up more car parks for the park, and that's where most of the car parks are. That's my main concern, is why build 2 bus shelters as opposed to just move one. And I understand that there's traffic lights going in on the corner as well. There's been a guy, I don't know if it's definite, but there's been a guy up there from Kinetics, and he's told me that they're planning. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Well, you've got a bit of time for questions. Does anyone have any questions?
You maybe want
Yeah,
to
yeah,
know.
go, Jason.
So are we thinking, so there's one of the bus stops that the shelter's proposed for? Is that the one right outside of Nunley Park, kind of close to the corner there?
Yes, well, on the original plan, that was, they said there would be a bus shelter built there, but I haven't seen any mention of it in here at all, but I haven't read it right through either.
And then where's the other one that you're talking about that's reasonably close? Is that on the same side of the road, further towards the airport?
That was my suggestion, to move that one beside Nunwick Park further towards the airport.
It's on the other side of Walridge's Road.
Exactly, yeah. And it frees up the congestion like that. The one at Nunwick Park is very close to the intersection now. And, you know, it takes that problem away as well.
Yes, yeah, Aaron.
So, and any feedback from any neighbours around demand, like if all your neighbours said, "Oh, I can't wait for a bus stop, we're all going to catch the bus now."
Well, it's not well, the people that live there, no one seems to use the bus. I do quite a bit, but the other ones don't. But that's just like when there's a sports event on, and most of the kids, I think, come by car anyhow. Very few would come on the bus. And there is also a bus stop only about probably 100 metres from the east side of Nunwick Park that people could get off there if they didn't want to go over Waldridge Road. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, then thank you so much, Russell, for coming along to support your deputation. What we'll do is we'll get to that item, so you might want to stay and talk to staff about some of the things that you've raised.
And Richard, who's coming up on the Zoom call, he's a neighbour as well.
Yeah, we'll get to him in 2 deputations time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next up we have Sue and Trevor.
Yeah. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to voice my opinion on this matter. We're talking about item 10, which is the Arundel Gate Hadfield Place free removal. Must be the most hated word in council, that 4-letter word, isn't it? Trees in Christchurch City are a major problem, and I do not think that the council gives this matter the consideration it deserves. I note that today this committee is addressing the issue of trees in 2 streets, and I'm sure that other community boards will be faced with similar issues and submissions on a regular basis. No one is questioning the importance of trees. Rather, in my opinion, it is the reluctance of the current city council to rectify mistakes made in the past. In many instances, it was simply been the wrong tree in the wrong place, and residents are now have to battle to get these issues rectified. You don't have to be an arborist to understand what I'm saying. All you need to do is simply walk the streets, and you'll see numerous instances where footpaths and streets have been damaged by tree roots, and there is little or no action by council to fix these. Height of trees is another issue, with now mature trees casting significant shadows onto residents' houses. I will not even attempt to discuss the issue of leaf fall, and surely this must be accepted as a significant issue by all. It is not only the council who are remiss in being proactive regarding trees, as many residents allow trees within their own property to cover the footpaths. I have never ever heard where the council has approached those offenders regarding this issue, and it highlights what I said earlier. The current council is not giving the matter of trees the recognition it deserves. Returning to today's submissions, I note there is discussion on the issue of which department's budget would cover the cost of any. This flabbergasts me. Cash is king, and surely the major consideration should be the overall cost of the operation, say over the next 5 to 10 years, rather than arguing over whether a capital item is in this year's budget. Board members, never forget, that's the taxpayers' money that pays for these projects. The submissions you have received on the Arundel Gate Hadfield Place shows a relatively low rate of response from residents in relation to the survey sent out by council staff. Incidentally, I note the response from the Shadow Drive issue was only marginally better. Having tried to encourage others in the area to make submission, the general reaction was, why bother? The community board will just do what the council staff recommend anyway. If I were in your shoes, I would be really concerned about The perception can become reality, and how you're going to overcome this is beyond me. Hatfield Place. The proposal appears to be a stopgap measure. That is, do a bit now to shut them up, and maybe we'll do a little bit later on, depending if the locals get upset and vocal again. It could well be considered a typical bureaucratic decision rather than biting the bullet and getting sorted once and for all. Assuming the aforementioned perception applies and the community board will rubber stamp the staff recommendation, the only change I would like to see from a personal perspective is that the tree highlighted for removal outside our residence, number 9, should be one on the western end rather than that indicated. Thank you. But just before I go, I'd like to say that obviously many of the submissions made for the Shadow Drive also apply to our area. So as I've said, it is a major problem for council, and I just don't think they recognise it or are prepared to do anything about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. You've got a bit of time for questions. Ken?
Yeah, hey, thanks, Trevor, for coming in. In terms, so you're at number 9, aren't you?
Mm.
Yeah. So looking at it, so I was of the impression in talking to Sue, it was the one right out by your driveway that was the issue.
No.
So you're quite happy to keep
Yes.
that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just thinking through, and we can tease it out with the team when they're here. If we so just so I'm clear, if I can't get rid of the other one today, do you want the one outside your driveway removed, or would you prefer it to stay?
Oh.
I know it's a difficult question. What I don't want to do is get to the end of the meeting and have got nothing out. Can you come up, so if you want?
Can I just address that issue?
Yeah.
The main issue with those 2 trees, they actually balance the house.
Yep.
But the tree of the driveway is not a problem because the canopy is nice, but the tree down this end causes a lot of problem because the acorns fall not only to our property,
Yep.
but the neighbours, but it creates problems with the leaves going down both properties, getting into gutters, acorns falling, people slipping, sliding, they cannot walk down there at all. We fill up we pay for a big bin ourselves, $500 a year.
Yeah.
We could fill that out 4, 5, 6 times with acorns. And then the seedlings are in the gardens. If you don't remove them, then we get small acorn trees.
Yep.
By the hundreds.
So in terms of, so if I can, I will. Like, and it may be, I don't know, it may be the issue we've got in Shadow Drive as well. But you're quite happy to keep that one at your driveway.
Yep.
Okay, so we don't want that taken out.
No, not at this present time, but it could go down further, down the track. It need to be.
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, that actually, what we could protect, I'll ask the staff when that comes through.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks.
But it does cause a lot of problems, and people that don't have trees, all the leaves just go up and down the street, and we just continually need every day.
Yeah.
We can spend 2, 3 hours in there every day.
Yep. Yep. No, I completely get what you're saying.
Right, don't go yet, Trevor. We've got another question.
Sorry.
Aaron, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, it's just around your comment around trees, and because we do hear it a lot around this wrong tree, wrong place. I get that a lot. Where is the right tree in the right place? Because our city's a bit under canopy, so we need to catch up our canopy. Where should we be putting lots of trees, in your opinion?
We've got lots of parks in the city. If it's a numbers game, there's plenty of room in parks to put trees in.
So I ask you one question then. We've got more than 1,000 parks in Christchurch. Would you be happy to see some of them lose the grass and just become all tree, like little mini forests? Should some of them turn into that? Still with a walkway through, so you can enjoy it.
Well, you got Dean's Bush. That works well.
So a bit more of that and less on the street.
Avonhead Park could do with, some nice trees. They have planted some nice cherry trees, but the dogwood trees that you mentioned here are actually quite nice trees. They're low, they have a nice flower, and they don't grow too tall.
We've been shown a planting plan for there, and there's some pretty cool stuff coming out.
Yeah.
I think the overall height of a tree is an issue.
Right.
And if they're going to something that's lower than the monsters we got, and silver birches can get horrendously tall as well.
Yeah, so happy to see more natives as well around the city.
Well, I've read a bit about that. Apparently natives suck up a lot of carbon while they're growing, but once they reach their maturity, they just don't, and no one will cut down a native. So you got that carbon uptake for a period of time, then you got nothing, and you're not allowed to cut down.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, that's a question we can ask them.
Yeah, thank you. I'm pleased with clarify that before we.
That's right. Not only that tree actually creates so much shade in our house. I have my heat pump on winter and summer.
The other tree.
No sun from that.
Yeah.
And so do the neighbours. They get no sun in their property either because it's so huge. Yes.
Yeah, okay. No, thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to get to that item shortly. We've got one more deputation. So we've got Richard online. Hi there, Richard. If you just want to unmute yourself, you've got 10 minutes.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And kia ora koutou. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you. And to Aidan for your organisation to get me online. My goodness, this is the first time I've sat through one of your meetings, and I certainly can see the need for wisdom in the decisions that you are making. And hopefully what I can add today will help in the issue around the bus stop. Now, just for information, I'm actually speaking from Hong Kong at the moment. I'm working here as the head of an international school. Previously was principal at Middleton Grange for many years. So I've been away for just over 3 years, but my wife and I, returning this July. And while we've been in Hong Kong, we've visited many times. And so I'm still very aware of everything that's going on. Now, you might be asking, why didn't we object in written form? I've had that conversation with a 24-year-old son who was living in the house and opened up a lot of mail when I asked him to check as to why we had this. So I just want to say thank you, Russ. And I imagine, Russ, you're still sitting there. Thank you so much for letting me know this, even at late notice. So I would like to put forward my objection to the bus stop option A and B on Wooldridge Road. And if I can just give you some of the grounds for that. Just as background, there had been a proposal some years ago to have a bus stop outside 317. At that time, we put an objection in, and that's when the bus stop didn't go there, but was put on Harewood Road. So I don't see that, apart from a cycleway, of course, that there's been substantive change to those earlier reasons. I honestly believe it would not be a wise use of resources. And the reason for that is that I sincerely believe we would be building something that would not be used. I'm sure I heard there's a traffic study being done. There may well have been a foot traffic study, but I hope the foot traffic study wasn't done around lunchtime, because I know that we have lots of Tate employees who will walk the block as part of their fitness. But seriously, for the rest of the day, it is quiet. There is nobody. You'll even see, if you look at the footpath, there is no continuous footpath along Wooldridge Road. So nobody coming from the south end is able to safely, they'll have to cross the road to come over to the bus stop because on the side that we live on, there is no continuous footpath. It actually stops at the end of, I think, 313. As Russ has indicated, he talked about 14 houses. There are only 5 houses in that stretch where the bus will meet the needs of. Weekday, no foot traffic to necessitate a bus to stop there. Saturdays, the place is just jam-packed with cars. I think a bus there would certainly impede the traffic. So I think for me, one of the biggest reasons when I hear about the competing needs of your resources, and it may be that this funding comes from another source, I don't see that this is a good, wise use of funding. The other reason for us, and I don't know if it's noted in the council, but we had to, after some time, go to the council to have a trailer removed that had been chained to the lamppost right at the end of our section. The number of, when I'm there, I'm not going to exaggerate, there have been some close calls of our children backing out of our driveway because, one, the speed of the traffic, but the visibility hindrance that this trailer had. So when I wrote to the council, thank you, the trailer was removed. But the bus stop there in itself, we have to come out of the driveway in order to be able to then see the traffic coming down the road. So I honestly think it's a health and safety danger. I do sincerely believe from experience and from what my children have said that there would be a risk to their own safety and for that of either cyclists or vehicles. A couple of little things, the area there. Now, whether it's to scale or not, but it is a massive area. Seriously, 30 people would stand there. And I don't think you would have 30 people walking down the street in a week. So just the size of it is significant. If you look at that area, the road has already been widened. So I accept it's not our land. We've lost a chunk of it. It's been tidied up. I like that. But there's actually a dip in it. There's a dip, and I've had to put a drain at one end. And so to even put a bus stop there is not just using flat land. It's going to be obviously a more expensive one. I just want to say, and Russ mentioned this, the traffic flow in the evenings and in the mornings is considerable from Tate. It backs up, and you'll get cars with the 2 lanes. Some cars zooming in that inside lane. If a bus is there, it'll just slow down already what is a very long traffic flow that's there. And it is close to the intersection. Someone asked whether or not the neighbours had all been asking, is there, yay, we're going to have a bus service. No one. There's just not the demand to put a bus stop there. Now, I do see that we do need one around. I think we are so close to other buses that would be on Harewoood Road, which is the main thoroughfare. It would meet the needs of people. It really would. You don't need to generate a bus stop for the people who live on that road. The best end for the bus stop is down the Tate end, which is where most of the employees will get on and off the bus, for example. So at this end, I don't see it. I really commend Russ. Thank you, Russ, for just sharing proposals about where buses could go, bus stops could go on Harewoood Road. To walk 60 metres for anyone who might be living in those 5 houses wouldn't be a problem. And I think the benefits for the council, the benefits for the residents, in fact, the benefits for traffic flow would far outweigh putting a bus stop there. So I think for me, my main 2 objections would be, number one, it just will not get the demand that would give cost benefit value analysis. I really do not see that. And secondly, I have a personal concern about vehicle safety for people coming out of our driveway in particular. So look, I really do thank you for this opportunity. I much appreciated. I would strongly urge, please, this is not a NIMBY or anything else like this. This is just going, it's not needed. It's just not needed. It will not create demand for a bus stop at that particular point. So thank you, Madam Chair, for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. You've got a bit of time for questions. Does anyone have any questions for Richard?
Very clear.
No, yeah, I've got one question just around clarification. So when you say no to option A and no to option B, you're meaning you'd rather do nothing?
No, I'm saying option and look, honestly, I thank Aidan for the information given to me. I've printed out the photos there. So option A and B, A I think is outside 317, B was outside 607, but as Russ has said, that's on his section there. I'm just saying that along that stretch of road, on that side of the road, there would be no need for a bus shelter or a bus stop because it would not meet any need.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. All right. Thank you so much, Richard, for tuning in all the way from Hong Kong. We appreciate your time. We'll be getting to the item shortly. So sit tight and yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to item number 6, which are presentation of petitions, which there were none, which brings us to staff reports. So we're starting with item number 7, proposed road names. Marilyn. This looks quite
Happy to-
straightforward, so we'll probably be pretty quick with this.
Happy to move to the third option.
Yeah, well, I'll just say, have you got anything you want to add?
No, you can read take the report as.
Yeah, perfect. Excellent. All right. Thank you for all your work on that. I think that was,
Very compelling.
yeah, very compelling. There was Aaron to move,
That's the easiest
David
one.
to second. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Carried. Great. Thank you. All right.
Yes.
Moving on to item number 8, which is the Avonhead Park Sports Field lighting. So we have Angela here.
In Kim.
Oh, and Kim.
He's going to tell us that.
Kim?
Angela can come.
Thank you. Yeah. Again, we've read it, and I'll quickly see if you've got anything to add.
I just wanted to say that I've been working with Phil Green from FC 2011 Football Club, met him on site to look at the position of the lights. We also met baseball there as well to make sure there wasn't going to be any conflict there. He's been really communicative and really good to work with. And staff see the club as being really strong, and they're doing lots of fantastic programs with youth and young ones. So we absolutely support this application for lights.
Great.
Right.
Fantastic. I think we had Sam, you suggested that you wanted to
Yeah, I'm happy to move it.
move it. Yeah, and then Trish to second. All right, all those in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? Carried. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Excellent. So you guys are welcome to leave. Thank you for your work.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
No worries.
All right.
You often want the papers that just go straight through.
Okay, moving on to item number 9, Chateau Drive. We have Tony here to take us through the report.
Well, you know the outcome we're after, Tony. Steer the ship.
Okay.
On the bridge.
Yeah. So we've read the report.
Yeah.
Would you like to take us through anything or respond to any of the points that were raised from the deputations?
I think firstly, thank you for Tony to coming along and everybody else. That was very informative and a clear deputation. Little bit not contrary, but we had our own consultation, and there was some things brought up in this which we weren't covered previously, and hence perhaps not in the report. But moving on from that, I think the issues that were raised really were potentially health and safety ones. Our assessment of the situation is essentially based on a agricultural assessment and landscape assessment, so condition of trees and their generally positive impacts on the amenity of the street, recognising that it's a small local cul-de-sac area. So the damage to infrastructure, we obviously picked up on that as well, as in we highlighted 3 trees were clearly damaging the public infrastructure. So in the case of the curb and channel, which is quite significant. The other ones raised, we have to rely on our engineers' assessment of what can and can't be done with regards to what we call lesser significant infrastructure. So footpaths can generally be repaired. And I think in one case, at least, an attempt had been made. And so we always look at those options and what are the alternative options to removing a tree if infrastructure can be repaired, given that if there is damage, the removal of the tree doesn't actually fix the problem. So, regardless, we still have to potentially revisit those other 2 trees that have been raised. Over and above that, obviously the health issues, which, it's not something that we can easily resolve except from people themselves, providing that medical evidence that the trees are problematic for their health. And so that was welcomed as well, that, there was that discussion around that. So that's probably the way forward, is that we, sort of clearly identify what the reasons would be for the removal of the other 5, whether it be a combination of damage to infrastructure or health issues. the question still remains about the consent. And as the report is presented, we only have the global consent for the removal of the 3 at the present time. And so, we're reviewing how that can be potentially amended or a new consent applied for, which sort of more clearly demonstrate what our legal way forward is to act on a decision that's made. So I think perhaps, if there's any other questions, I'm open for, discussion.
Okay. Yes, James.
It's really going to be a case of, we had some wording that Aidan's just been finishing up, and I just really wanted to get Tony's advice of what we've got here. It's going to be workable from a staff perspective and provide like a logical way forward anyway to resolve this.
Glasses on.
So it's got the first one is as is, but the second one is approving principle the removal of the remaining 5 silver birch trees on Shadow Drive, subject to council receiving sufficient evidence under the policy, which is essentially one of the health, a doctor's certificate that can certify that this is responsible for it, and then 2, council obtaining the necessary resource consent. So that should, in theory, deliver what the residents are wanting, what we're wanting, and should be workable for you. Is that the case?
That's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm happy to move that, Madam Chair, but obviously there's.
Well, I think it might be helpful just to sort of break this down, just so that people in the gallery understand sort of what we're doing here. What we're trying to do is get to an end result where the trees can be removed, is essentially it. And so it's making sure that part A and B is obviously something that the residents will have to be comfortable with around, especially the sufficient evidence. So it's just around what we mentioned with the medical certificates. And who would be, a question for you, Tony, who would be the person that, who would be liaising with residents on this process for the next step so they understand what's happening?
Sure. Okay. Well, I guess I'll receive the resolution from this evening, discuss that amongst staff. But essentially, we had one person assigned from our engagement team who undertook the consultation, and I think he was in contact with you at the time of, throughout up until the advisory note that went out about this evening. So I guess, we do it through that resource.
Okay.
And if it meant going back individually to those, it's an individual person or putting out a broadcast kind of message that essentially what we would be looking for is that anybody who had a medical condition or reason that they would come back to us, and then on receipt of that, we'd sort of collate that. And I'm envisaging that we would just report that back to the board, perhaps just in an information format rather than for a further decision. So essentially what we're looking for this evening is a decision that we can then go forward with. Of course, we still, the outstanding thing is the resource consent, and there's no 100% guarantees with that, but I'm sort of, I think there's a way through this, particularly with the information that came through this evening, and if we can follow up just to solicit more.
Okay. Yeah, we've got 2 questions. We'll do James, because it sounds like it's something.
Yeah, really quickly then on that. I just want to be crystal clear on it. So subject to when the engagement staff then go back and say, hey, if anyone has any medical reasons for that we should consider, please submit that in, assuming that residents, and from what we've heard, this shouldn't be an issue, that a medical certificate or a doctor's certificate could be provided from that, which should then take or help with the second part, which is the resource consenting part. Assuming that all occurs and medical certificate could be provided, could you guys then just go ahead with that? There's no need to come back to a community board, no need to get residents to come back and go through a rigmarole again. If that all panned out,
yes,
that we could just then get moving on it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And Sorry.
Oh, no. So, my question was, so if it was the case that for whatever reason, the medical evidence provided didn't meet the threshold for that resource consent, there's the estimated timeline of the process that's being gone through around the new global consent, is that somewhere between 3 and 4 months or something, and then it's end of September? And so then from then, that evidence might then actually fall into the criteria so we can get them removed.
That's the timeframe we're looking at, and mindful that the onset of symptoms or problems with pollen in the trees is spring, August, September, and lasting through. So that would be what we're working to. But of course, we'll go back and revisit those 2 trees that were referred to with footpaths, because obviously we don't want to expend money on fixing something and then we've got to sort of coordinate work. So and with the planting also, whether we leave it until next season now. We do have some supply issues with trees, and we're coming to the end of the financial year, so it's a juggling act. But it might be that the number 1, the 3 we could act on in the short term, so before the end of June.
Okay.
The balance of the 5 would remain on the table.
Yeah, we've got Jason.
Just to roll with Well, when is generally the best planting? Is it late autumn and early spring? Are they generally the best planting times, or
it's about now?
About now.
Autumn, winter.
Okay.
Yeah. Depending on the type of plant and situation. Yeah.
Okay. And yes, I see your hand. It's we've got Aaron.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear Tony's very well, but am I getting the impression that if we provide a number of medical certificates from people within the cul-de-sac, then and present that, then it's fait accompli in terms of your ability within your rules and regulations to be able to approve the removal of those trees? Is that what I'm hearing?
It certainly supports the case.
So it's still a discretionary aspect, even with those medical certificates.
There's still the regulatory framework that we have to work to. So, we're putting a report up based on, the tree policy as it stands, and that has certain requirements. And it also has to meet the delegations, which is why we're speaking, because it's not a staff delegation, but it's for the board to make the decision. It's all subject to us being able to legally act on the decision, which is essentially the resource consent. Now, one of the options was that every individual make their own application, which is time and costly for everyone and doesn't really may not come to a satisfactory outcome. Or we make it collective and council takes the initiative. And that's why we put up the option of there's 3 trees there that we can do, which meet the conditions of our consent, but the other 5 don't presently. So we had a briefing with the board last week, which we talked through this issue and really looking at either amending or applying for new consent, which would deal with these cases. So long as it meets the policy, hence if you can provide the medical certificates, because obviously that's the critical issue here is people's health. We believe that damage to footpath, it's something that can be, there is an engineering solution. It might not be 100% satisfactory, but we have to work with that. So that's sort of outlines a bit of the framework and the rules we have to work to and what we're trying to achieve. So.
So essentially, just so we're really clear. So what appreciate that we can't promise that the 8 trees will be removed. We're doing what we can to get to a point where they can be, and to support evidence and to support your case, so we can get to that point. Having sufficient evidence around medical the effects that are impacting people around health. Is a strong argument to make. And then on top of that, there is the resource consent as well. But at the moment, there's a change around the global consent.
Yes, to specifically address this.
To address this, to fix this issue where residents get to a roadblock where the tree can't be removed. So my understanding is if we move this, then the steps from here would be removing the 3 trees, and then who's the engagement?
Kieran. So he's the co-author of the report.
Right.
Kieran's,
yeah.
Yeah.
Kieran gets in touch with the residents. Yeah. What, to you guys? Or to?
I'm just wondering whether we need to bring the engagement team back into it. The residents tonight have heard what we need from them. Can they not just, that could come to Aidan perhaps, and then we can forward.
So it's either or. I'm just thinking of a singular person who could manage it as a sort of under the auspices of sort of project, but if it's easier to come directly.
Yeah. I just think it's probably, you know, you're putting another step in the process by then getting them involved to go out and let the residents know we need them to do this. They've heard tonight what they need to do. So
yeah. And then
I think we'd be quite happy if it just whether this board or the engagement team, as you refer to, just send us an email and say, look, you know, to along the lines of what you've already got up there. This is the further information we need from.
Either way, that will happen.
Even enough.
Yeah.
That it can come to probably myself or one other. We can get it back to you.
Yeah.
We'll give you a reference to the policy here. Where specifically step in the resolution there 4.2 for tree health. Personal health. 4.21. So look at the tree policy. It will kind of highlight.
We can
and that's really the basis of our.
We'll refer to those points in the email so you know exactly what we need.
You'll let Marilyn go, she could have probably pointed you to a suitable clause that says, look, guys, you can do this right now.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So does that? Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you for wording that, James. That's great. So
That's Aidan, actually.
Aidan, thank you, Aidan. Yeah, Aidan. Okay. Shall we have a mover for this then?
Just very quickly on that, I think it's pretty clear, but I just want to be 100%. Is there anything more that we could do as a board to expedite this process or shore up the result that we all want and the residents want? Or have we captured it there?
I think you captured it.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the clarity on the decision making, the reason as it relates back to the policy, and the policy spells it out. So, I mean, this has been a little bit different in that, you know, because it's a collection of people, and you know, we could have gone back to them individually at the start and said, make an application, and we'd probably be still here, not having finished all of them. But putting it all together like this is sort of, in some ways, made it easier. But you know, it's got the flip side of we've got to address lots of the individual issues. But yeah, I think that deals with it.
I'm happy to move, Bridget.
Right. I just saw Aaron had a question before.
Well, there's 2 questions that are related to each other, and one is because it was raised by 2 of the presenters tonight around the damage to footpaths and gutters. And yes, they can be repaired, but in a world where we've got escalating costs and infrastructure, one of the frustrations ratepayers have is that we go back and keep repairing things, knowing the tree will grow bigger again and damage it again, and then we repair it. And this is a major bugbear of the mayor, that he wants the roving footpath crew to be repairing things that can repeatedly get repaired. So then should that not trigger removals as well? Is that not infrastructure damage?
It's part of it, but we have to somehow have a threshold, you know, what's significant or not. So, you know, any crack in the footpath could be construed as damage.
Yeah,
but whether it's repairable.
Right.
Yes, there's a cost to it.
Which then brings me to my second part, which is around the consideration of the accessibility considerations. And that matched with infrastructure. I don't know that the 2 are talking to each other, because we had highlighted tonight the potential of wheelchair role. And the wheelchair standard, I believe, is 1 in 14 as the, and it's clearly shown in the presentation that's well beyond that at a couple of points. So which should automatically trigger a removal because it's beyond our design standard, which is a 1 in 14 tender or angle for any wheelchair, anywhere or walking frame. That one, and then the other one in accessibility, which almost never comes up, is for people that are sight impaired, either completely blind or partially, that it becomes a tripping hazard when you get, we've got heaps of them in Northwood, but as you probably know, and because the root goes through and it creates one little roll up, and once it's up more than 20 mil, that's, I think, or 25, I think is the standard for a tripping hazard or something. There's a limit. Is it 50? Sorry, it's not on our gutters, but it's, I thought it was 25 an inch type thing. But yeah, so how come they're not triggering removals when it's in the report?
So again, the start point is looking at the tree, and then what are the what is the, if it's a damage, then it's what is the infrastructure, what is the significance of that, and the impacts on how it might function. So the curb and channel, it's potentially drainage and these sorts of issues in the road. There's a risk matrix type thing. Footpaths, yes, we acknowledge that people trip on footpaths. But as I say, footpaths can be repaired, and it's
some people can't be.
Some people can't be, yes, acknowledge that. So there are, we're stepping outside a little bit of what is an arboricultural assessment. Right. We're going, where's the cost benefit? Obviously, if it's a very significant tree that has high value, then it might be worth repairing the footpath 10 times over 50 years because the value is.
So then just finally, like on the tripping that happened today, and say that woman had or lady had in her fall, had injured her head, had a permanent head injury, and the family decide, well, we told you multiple times, asked for you, and then sue.
Well, we have ACC, don't we? So, but that's another story in terms of trying to resolve.
Yeah, but then you got neglect. ACC doesn't cover when there's a property owner neglects.
Yeah, it's a higher level discussion of. I'm an arborist. I talk about the tree, and then with footpaths.
So, and that's why I raise them. So that should be in our consideration. I'll leave it. We'll hear again.
You're raising really good points, but I also want to focus on these 8 trees as well, and getting some resolution for the residents. So
the lawyer, you'd get the work.
Anyway, so
it's very much a balance of lots of things that fit into a matrix, and we have to assess risk and cost and so on and so forth. But case by case basis, and we will revisit those.
That makes sense. Thanks.
All right, so James to move, and the seconder, David to second. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Carried. Great. All right, well, thank you so much, Tony, for this. And thank you to all the residents who've come along from Chateau Drive. So staff will be in contact around what the next steps are. Great. You're welcome to leave. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, thank you.
There were more.
Thanks, Tony.
Sorry. There were more of us that were
Okay, moving on to item number 10, which is Arundel and Hatfield.
So this one's good, except we need to change swap trees. Yeah. So because I don't want to approve a tree that don't want taken out. It would go this. So how? Oh, sorry, you probably want
to. Anything that you want to say, maybe in response to the decision?
Well, thanks for coming along. We've met before, spoken on site, and looked at these things. So, we've tried to remediate problems by pruning those 2 particular trees. I guess just highlighting our assessment is objective using our criteria. We're looking at retaining the better quality tree, and we're recommending that the lesser quality tree in terms of its form structure is the one that we would remove. It's not something that we need to do immediately. It doesn't quite meet that threshold of health and safety risk, but we can see over its it has a less useful life expectancy than the other one. So that's that, particular situation. I guess the broader context is that there's a lot of trees been removed already, large canopy trees, and we've signalled so that I think another 7 that we would be happy to recommend be removed. There's only one in Hatfield that we, if nothing else happened, that we think it could be problematic, and that's on the plans marked red, that is, it's had a history of branch failure. So from our perspective, that's the one that we really need to focus on. But yeah, looking ahead, it's mindful that, this is another one that's taken a couple of years to try and get some sort of resolution. We do want to bring it some sort of resolution. I'm generally comfortable that with Hatfield Place, perhaps with the exception of number 9, we've probably got a satisfaction there. This kind of feedback that we've had, we were proposing to plant 2 trees. There was a couple of birches that could be removed, and they were generally happy at Hatfield. Arundel Gate is still possibly the talking point. I'm not quite sure how you want to handle this, because along with this one, and we on the plan, I don't know if you've got it all in front of you, there's about 6 question marks, which following the feedback, each of those, that represents 3 other individuals who have come back saying that they would like to see the tree removed outside of their property. So if we look at Arundel Gate specifically, we've got, so that's, perhaps we'll come back to number 9. So that one there is problematic because the 3 there have been actually removed now. We're already removed, plus the 2 either side of it, they've all gone. They're all mature oak trees. So then we've signalled 2 other trees. One of those is an oak. But those 3 are the question marks. They're all large oak trees. And then we've got the 3 outside number 7 up there, where originally we thought the submission was, we don't want an extra tree in there. But we met that person and they've actually come back in a submission saying, we actually want all those 3 removed. So you take all that on board, you're saying, well, we've lost 3 and now we're going to remove another 1, 2 plus 6, another 8 trees in Arundel Gate. We've just about lost all the trees in the street. So it's kind of...
Yeah. So my understanding, maybe I've got it wrong. My understanding was we're outside Jeff's house, which is number 7. He just didn't want one planted at the back. He wanted to remove it. We talked to him there and said, look, tidy up the
mulch that
berm, then we're kind of, we can kind of live with that. I think the one over there made, this one on this side made sense because it was weird. That was that funny tree.
The one with marked orange with the cross.
Yeah, I think people had asked for that one, but that other one was huge. And then the same with that one, freeing up one down there made sense as well. And then we're going to replant over the other side. I was genuinely quite comfortable with where we got to with Arundel Gate. But my concern is just literally flicking those 2 trees around. So that's where I'm probably more keen to get in Hatfield. And looking at it tree canopy wise. We already had one, so if we skip to
So the one on the right is the ash tree I talked about, and then we've got another oak going west. That's the one by the driveway.
All I'm proposing to speed it up, and if we can do it, is keep that one, get rid of that one. That's what, and looking, because I've got it on my Google Maps, the tree canopy covers are the same and everything, and I just think then we're Hatfield and Arundel Gate will be sorted.
Does that one?
Put it in writing.
Does that qualify?
Sam said sorted.
Yeah.
Sorted or sort of?
Sorted. I just need that. That's
well, the only thing I can say to that is, what I said previously is that, we've highlighted that one as a lesser form tree that at some stage we would probably have to remove anyway, or continue pruning to, removal. And then the other one is, you know, we pruned it up and it's a, you know, it's a good quality tree and we probably have to do less maintenance of it. But I understand that the residents sort of got the issues which relate more to nuisance factors. So they haven't cited damage or health reasons, though it falls under the other reasons. Yeah. So I don't know that we would get to say.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to work out is I'm looking at them both now on the Google Maps, and I'm kind of going, they look, and I'm not an arborist, but they look the same.
What year is that? Because it's
well, if it helps, the ones across the road are still in, so I don't know.
Not this year.
What I'm trying to get to though is, so could we approve everything else, and could you, and I hate doing it, but could you go away and maybe come back next month with some, I just, what I don't want to do is say we'll approve it now, but then you come back in a week's time and say, actually, you can't, and then we can't get rid of anything. So can we carve out those 2 outside Hatfield, get some more advice and bring it back to a future meeting? Because I really want to, if we can, because the other side of it is the operating costs, and what goes through my mind is, Sue will continually, and quite rightly, say, I want this tree pruned, which then we send people out to do, whereas they're saying they're quite happy with the other tree. So if we're looking at what we're doing in the street, it's 1 for 1. Yeah.
I just might say, at the moment, tree on the right, the one marked to come out, is a smaller canopy than the other one. The only reason is that is because they pruned that one, and they didn't do the other one. So I don't know why.
They pruned both, but in different ways.
They didn't prune the second one.
Yeah, they did, because I watched them do it.
Yeah, they just took a little bit.
So perhaps they didn't do it the way that.
Wait, sorry, we'll just bring it back. It's just, it's helpful for,
So what's the way forward with this one, Tony?
I would say something similar to Chateau, in that if that's where you're leaning and we're free to go. So there are no other trees that, so it's not another 5 in them, it's what's presented. Plus, I'd have to say it's probably not either or, it's it would probably be a plus, that one. And we'd just have to see if it goes through the consent, because that's the, you know, final kind of, it either comes first and we get the consent approved and then we come to the board, or if we're doing it where we, you know, present it to the board, we make the decision, but we still have to go and get consent. Still has to get that final approval.
Is there not a waiting if we're, I'm just thinking from a tree canopy cover type thing going, there are 2 trees outside the house. One of them they're quite happy to keep. The other one they're not. Surely there's something in there that goes, we're not going to be around there as much pruning it, all of that kind of stuff.
Comes down to the condition of the tree. If it's a good, you know.
So I'm struggling to understand what's wrong with the condition of.
It's a form thing. It's you know, framing and its experience, and it's, you know, it's a professional opinion. But there's also the reason for its removal. So, you know, I guess what we heard is nuisance. You know, it's drops acorns, drop leaves, which are contrary to the policy. You know, quite clearly stated.
It's also having the heat pump on all year round.
Yeah, so but if it's daylight,
My house is.
so if it's daylight, that's slightly different. So I mean, you know, it seems like we're kind of splitting here, a bit answer, but we do have to be quite clear, because on what reasons are, what remedies there might be, so we can work to, you know, it's a very straightforward decision, or it's more complex and has to be considered. So, you know, if you're saying that it's the principal reason is loss of life, takes it to another level, you know, with just similar to Pasadena Reserve, you know, one of the main reasons for the residents' dissatisfaction with those trees is loss of life during the winter, which are now gone. And I've been there today, the trees are gone, replanted. So,
did you say in a few years that you would be re-looking at that tree to remove it anyway? Is that what you said?
No, I didn't say that. I don't think I said that. No,
the one that you're proposing, they were saying, keep that one and get rid of the other one.
Sorry,
the one with
okay, no, that's just in the interest of time, we've got a bit more on the agenda as well. It sounds like we're going down approving the recommendation, but adding a additional amendment to say having staff seek to review the what do you call it, the removal of the additional tree. And it sounds like what we spelled out with Chateau Drive, that there are certain criteria that have to be met, and that nuisance it's not enough, essentially.
Unless it can be proven to, I think what the wording, to seriously have an effect on enjoyment of one's property, you know, where it's a serious impediment to one's life.
Yeah.
So, we have 75,000 street trees to manage, and all of them can be a problem to somebody in some way, but we have to manage them somehow and try and, retain, grow them, because they're dynamic assets, so
dying assets.
Dynamic. Some of them are dynamic, so over time they change, situate, and I guess the context of this is that, we've 3 have gone already, 3 mature trees, and we're proposing to remove another sort of 4 in that vicinity. So I would say that would probably have a positive effect on their livelihood. But if it is something very specific to that, which we don't know about, then we'd have to look into that further, and it would have to be subject to a review, see whether we get consent or not. Right. On the face of it, it doesn't meet the criteria.
So in terms of way forward, because I guess what I'm conscious of is, quite rightly we agree, if we agree in principle to do that, we probably should note that the resident is quite happy to have the other tree. I guess what I want is if we can consider in the context of the 2 trees out the front, and the fact that the resident has been pragmatic and saying, actually, we're happy to keep 1.
Yeah.
I would have thought that could give some weighting, but I'm just conscious that once we do this, then it's completely off the board's involvement. It just becomes a consenting issue, doesn't it?
It would.
So how would the residents interact with? How would Sue interact with?
I think you've got my number, haven't you?
Yeah, you're saying we're not swapping.
Well, you say saying we can't.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's not something I can. All I can do is advise on, and
but the board. I thought the board can still make the decision.
The board can still make a decision.
We'll just move it.
But it's the same issue as Waimāero Road and Swan Place.
But we have a way through that.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. So
no, what I'm saying is if we approved it, it may not even still get removed until we
throw it into the same mix as those 2.
Oh, right.
Almost trees it individually, that we've involved everything else.
Yeah.
Just going to look at one.
So you're
so that you don't have to make the consent application. Taking it on board into the council.
Right. Okay. That might be the way forward then. Yeah.
It might be.
So the only other question, just so I'm really clear, are you happy for us to approve that other tree to be removed? So the one outside your driveway.
Possibly both of them gone.
And then it would probably be both gone.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I just add one? That tree on the western side of the airport is, I can actually put a stick down. It's sort of undermined under the tree. So I don't know if that's a big wind gust, but it's just holding together like just one big major tree root. So I don't know if actually seen it because of your garden or not, but it can actually go underneath it.
That would have been looked at, possibly habitat or something. It doesn't necessarily mean, just as you can have habitats and trunks of trees, it doesn't mean to say that they're unstable.
These aren't.
Yeah.
These aren't.
We'll drill down and look in more detail, and we'll look at shading.
No less. No less.
All right.
Okay, so. Oh, right, okay.
Just taking the same line, really.
Yeah. So that basically approves the removal of the one tree out the front, the other one. And then this one here is saying the board's agreed in principle to remove your other tree, but then it's a consenting thing that you'll be able to work through with the team.
Those plants and small trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it can actually. There's services that run right through.
So you wouldn't put trees there anyway.
Not in that situation. That's one of the including
It's all right. Give the money to Anthony. He'll get you 100 to 1.
Yes, but it's a lovely lawn, and we've got some.
So we do, we look after it.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, it's on your front lawn, isn't it? It just happens to be.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably where we can get to today, which is a way forward. At least it gives you a direct line with the team to deal with that over the next couple of. Yeah. Okay, I'm happy to move that. Thanks, Tony. That's a really good way forward. Appreciate that.
Sam, and do you have a seconder? Thank you, Suresh. Say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Thanks, Tony.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tony. Thank you for all your help and assistance today. That's great.
Not over yet. It's almost.
All right.
Your day.
It's not my day. Well, that too, but but yours, I guess.
And thank you so much, Sue and Trevor, for coming along. Thank you. Welcome. You're welcome to head away.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
We'll stay in and do the democratic process.
All right.
No, it's good. It's good. It makes it
Okay,
easier.
moving on to item number 11, we have Waldridge Road and Harewood Road, and we have Sarah, and Georgia. Hello.
I didn't really plot it.
All right, everyone, refocus for item 11 for bus stops and shelters.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks for having me today. Sitting next to me, I've got Ross Service. She works at ECAN and she's the engagement advisor, and she can help answer any operational or route change questions that you may have. So is it all right if I take the report as read and get into more of the issues that were raised tonight with the deputations? So to start with the broader context of public transport in this area, we have the port-to-port route that was consulted on last year and endorsed by the ECAN Council to go up Waimāero and then right onto Woolwich and then left onto Harewood and continue out to the airport. So this came back from a community consultation that ECAN ran. It was strong support for changing this route. It connects a really high area in the airport with lots of visitors and a huge workforce, and it provides a high frequency route down Harewood and Woolwich and straight into the city. So this is going to be a 15-minute frequency, and so therefore residents that live at the intersection of Harewood and Woolwich and a small section that live on that mid-block now have access to a high frequency core route to the airport and to town. So at the moment, we have the 125 bus route that's travelling up Harewood Road. And when you've got a 3-digit bus number, that means that it's going across town, that it's not going into the city. And then when you have a 2-digit, it's a lower frequency, but it is going into the interchange. And then the 1-digit bus routes, they're called our core routes. And that's the high frequency one. So that's what we're getting with the port-to-port, which is a great outcome for public transport. So I wanted to address a couple of the concerns now that was raised through those deputations, but are there any questions about any of the broader context of
Aaron, is your question
area?
Is your question about the broader context?
Well, it kind of is, but
Not
it mainly comes out of the deputations as well. But with the putting the stuff in, especially under the accessibility, because it's the most paragraphs I've ever seen in a report around accessibility. How many people in the area that was surveyed have accessibility needs that infrastructure will be added for? So I get that that'll be added elsewhere, and I would find this incredibly frustrating if the number's low, because we've had people with accessibility issues in other areas wanting infrastructure upgrade, not getting it where it's actually needed, and here we could be putting it in. But if there's high need, then I'm keen to hear
So it's a general demographic of the area. I don't have the specifics about how many people, but generally when we put new infrastructure in, we aim
it.
for a high level of a level of service that's been agreed across council. So we have detailed designs, standard detailed designs that we. So it really caters for a wide range of users of public transport. You have mums with prams getting on and off. You have people that have temporary injuries, needing to get the bus.
Right.
So it's important for us to, when we invest in our new infrastructure, to do it so that everyone has access to public transport, not just.
And then my other question is, how many people in the areas where we're putting the bus stops said they wanted to use the bus?
So
a high frequency or any bus?
So generally with our consultations, we're consulting with the property owners that are directly affected by the parking changes, the need for public transport and the core bus route that goes through there. And the route changes, that's done by ECAN, and they do a much larger consultation to say, is this something that the community want? Do you want the bus route through here? And then that's considered and taken, all of that consultation is considered by ECAN's council. And then they say, the community really wants this route through here and we've agreed to install it. So it's now council's responsibility to implement that infrastructure.
They don't share that data with us.
We delivered to every household on that route.
And they said?
We got a variety of responses, as you would know. And we got some responses, obviously, that didn't like the change. But I can't remember the percentage. It was something like, I think, 80% that agreed with the new port-to-port route.
So then the current passenger usage on that route is what, and it will become what with the?
So at the moment,
so notice we're spending millions and the bus numbers have plateaued. They're going nowhere. And
no, the bus numbers are rising.
They are. It's interesting. We'd be good to see those numbers.
So we do get monthly numbers through that are reported through our KPIs, because one of the KPIs that we work towards is improving bus patronage so that we can get people out of cars and give them an opportunity to choose the way that they travel around our city. We are going to have a core route crossing a non-core route, so it will be used as a transfer stop as well as that local community.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Please speak to, welcome to answer questions around some of the specific deputations.
Yeah, I'll just go through a couple of the concerns that I captured while listening to the deputations, and please let me know if you want me to cover anything else. So I think the first was one of the things that came up was the cost of the shelter. So at the moment, the cost of the shelter is sitting around $23,420, and that includes the installation and the foundations and the shelter itself and the glass. We have experienced a bit of an increase in the shelter costs, and that's partly due to the construction costs, and also that we're putting in reinforced toughened glass in our shelters now. So it's a much better quality material. Previously, we were putting in perforated steel and we were getting lots of phone calls on those cold, wet, rainy days to say that it wasn't providing the right level of service. So we're proposing 2 shelters at the moment. We did have a third shelter in our plans at Nunweed Park. And I apologise that I didn't communicate that well enough with the community through my post-consultation letters, but we took that off the plan for approval today because we're still talking to Park and looking at our budgets. And we may bring that to the community board at a later date.
But we're not deciding that shelter today.
No.
It's off the table.
It's off the table, yes, at the moment. So it's just the 2 shelters proposed at the moment. They've been put there because it's going to be a high frequency bus service and also a transfer stop between those two core routes and that non-core route. And the fact that we're trying to get more people to get the bus. So adding a shelter is a nice carrot so that they can wait in dry and comfort. So the next thing that we've got is we've got 2 bus stops on Harewood Road. The first one's outside Nunweek Park, and the deputation said, why don't you move that 150 metres down the road and put it outside. It would probably go outside 623 Harewood Road. We really looked at that option quite closely. We can't have it too close to that intersection because at a later date we might want to put a right turn lane in there because there is a bit of traffic through there, and so we'd have to move it quite far up. We also have considerable drainage issues there. So there's no curb there at the moment, and then there's a swell, and then there's a path. And there's talk about making that a shared path in the future as well. So it becomes very difficult to put a bus stop there because we've got to consider where all the water will go. If I put a curb and a raised platform, I'd have to build up that whole section. And then I've got some considerable flooding issues there without adequate drainage or stormwater facilities around that area. So it was discounted and it's not been presented or consulted on. So what is consulted on is a bus stop on the approach of Woolridge Road. And there was 2 proposals for that. Our preferred option is option A, which is slightly further away from the intersection. We've had a look at the traffic there in the evening, and we've talked to our designers, and we don't believe that there's any safety issues with that bus stop. It is a bus stop that will just be used for dropping off and picking up passengers. So it won't dwell there for any length of time. So there's minor disruptions in traffic, and we see that scenario play out all over the city. We've got 1,700 bus stops, and positioning them close to intersections has the advantage of pedestrian crossing points. So I guess I'm just going to quickly refer to my notes to see if I've missed anything. I think that wraps it up. Do you have anything, Georgia?
I guess just in terms of the queuing on Woolridge Road, our designers looked at it and they came back and said that where is it? So option A allows for at least 12 vehicles to queue in each lane. And then you have a lane that carries on behind that as well. So it's not expected to cause any big delays there. As Sarah said, the bus will only be stopping for a short amount of time. The vehicles are queuing that far back, then there's likely another issue there.
Okay. I just also wanted to say that we are ECAN is implementing this route in September. So there's sort of an expectation from the community that there will be bus stops there to service that new route. At the moment, we don't have any bus stops along that route for a good 1.8 kilometres. So I think from a community perspective, it's quite frustrating to have a really great service run past your property without having any access to it.
Okay, we've got a few questions. So I'll do Jason, Sharish, and Aaron. Jason.
Okay, firstly, just running down through them, 215, Woolridge, no problems with that there, that makes perfect sense. I guess 317, the resident and the deputation have raised some issues around the visibility, the size of it, how well it'll be utilised. I guess I was thinking about traffic there. Wouldn't be a huge issue because I don't imagine the buses will be stopping there at all 90+% of the time. And when they are, there's not going to be a queue of 12 to 15 people waiting. So I don't imagine it's going to have any issues with traffic, but blocking traffic, because it's just going to be another member of the traffic most of the time. So I'm reasonably comfortable with that. One of the issues raised was the size and the cost of the platform there. What goes into how big those are? Because does it have to be that big? Because the big concrete pad and the size of it, like, can it be more simplified than that, or is that a required design spec?
So it's a requirement to have the front and the back door open on hard stand area. We don't want our bus passengers stepping onto wet grass or, you know, an uneven surface.
It has to be as long as the bus doors at each end.
So it has to be as long, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, and the shelter as well means that it's sort of like a 9-metre area.
Okay. So I was just confused, that one on 317, was there a shelter going in with that one? Which was the one that you were saying we're not controlling on the shelter?
Yeah, sure.
That was the one on Harewood Road outside the park.
Okay.
Yes.
That was my secondary question, was so Aaron and I discussed earlier, and the resident during one of the deputations mentioned that has consideration gone into the design of that one as to what that part of the path could look like when the cycleway goes in? Because I know we're looking, that part's going to be a shared path, and a part of the design we're looking at changing the parking layout there so the angle parking can go in so that we can get more car parks along. And we don't want to have something designed and built and put in there and then have to rip it out during the cycleway process. So has any consideration gone into how the cycleway will integrate into that?
Yes, we did work with the consultants currently working on that cycleway, and we had quite a few meetings to look at how these bus stops would integrate into a future cycleway. And there wasn't any issues raised with the proposals that I'm presenting to you this evening.
Okay. One last question for me, and that'll be me done. If we didn't put a bus stop at 317 and the nearest one was at 215, and then the next one down the western part of Harewood Road, what would the implications of that be? Does that mean it fails some certain rules within council that means that we can't not do that, or is it what would the implication of that be if that was the result at the end? Other than obviously there was access issues in terms of it, but are we breaking any kind of required rules around the bus stops if that was the case?
So I'm sorry, I'm not entirely sure which ones that you take out of the proposed.
And we get it on the map, because I think that will be easier.
Yeah, image one to show the layout.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was essentially, if we skip 280, 281 and 317 Woolridge, do we fail stuff?
Yeah. The distance between bus stops.
Yeah.
So you're talking about skipping 317?
Yes, if that was what the board decided.
And is there another one?
281 or 280, whichever one there is now.
Go to page 5.
So we'd end up with a good over 1 kilometre between the bus stops.
What does that mean?
It means that there's a catchment of residents that are outside that 5-minute walking catchment. And if you're walking too far, for your closest bus stop, then you're just going to choose to hop in the car.
Okay. No, that's good. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't doing something we can't do if that was the case.
Look, I see your hand. I also saw Richards as, no, not Richards, sorry. It is Richard, yeah. Richards as well. But we have spoken to both of you with the deputations. If it's just general comments, yeah. But I want to get back to the other questions that we had.
Yeah, no, I'm done.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Jason. So we had Sharish, Aaron, and then David.
So just for clarity,
Yes.
starting from south, the date blue dot,
Yes.
is it a bus shelter? Or
No,
just a bus
just a bus
stand?
stop at this stage.
Okay.
At this stage.
So that will be the most used. Then if you go further north, the next blue dot in the middle of the Woolridge Road, is it again a bus stand or a full bus shelter?
Just a bus stop at the moment.
Just a bus stop. Same for the next one?
I'm proposing a shelter there.
Okay. Because my understanding was that we get into shelters only when there is sufficient proven patronage on existing routes. So we always start with a stand, and as the demand goes, we put a bench, and as it grows even more, we put a shelter. That's what we do throughout the city.
Yeah.
So why are we going when there is no one staying there? We have heard the residents, no one seems to want the bus. They have lived without bus for all these years. So why do we go straight to a shelter? Why not just go with a stand? If you got 100 passengers, then we put a shelter.
Yeah, so that's a recommendation that this group can make. The reason why I'm recommending that shelter is because it's a transfer stop, and that we have a document called PT Futures Indicative Business Case, and they have done a lot of analysis and they've looked at the methodology of how we install the shelters, and there's a big push to increase the amount of shelters on our network to provide a better level of facility to get people out of cars and into the bus so that we can reduce our emissions and have an improved public transport system. So therefore, they have recommended that we put more shelters on core routes that are inbound to the city and to key activity centres as well.
Cool. Is that it, Trish?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was endorsed by council back in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I support that, except that it needs to be proven. And I don't think we have proof of that much transfer of people.
It's not a highly residential area.
Yeah. All right. Aaron.
Sharish kind of just covered it off, really. But I mean, unless we're showing numbers of how many people in this area are committing to using the bus, that have said, look, I live down here, I'm half blind, I can't drive, a bus would be fantastic. That any of that stuff would be great, because then that would also dictate where the shelters go. But I'm kind of like with Sharish and almost that, yeah, it sounds a little bit like debate. It's not. It's a question at the end. I'll just say, I'll make it one. We should potentially gold plate one route and then watch the growth on that route. And if it really works, and everyone goes, wow, we love this. And then we should roll that out across the city. But I'm just not seeing evidence that it's working. So happy to put the bus stops in so people can get to it, use it when it's there, and then add the platforms and the other stuff when they're needed. Or if someone from the disability community in the area goes, hey, I need a platform, we'll knock ourselves out, absolutely do it. But until then, we should be putting that infrastructure where it's actually needed. So that's my question, is why wouldn't we do that?
So I think if we remove the platforms, especially on Harewood Road, we've got quite significant safety issues for the bus passengers. There'll be no safe place for them to wait because there's no footpath. You've just got the road, and then you've got the grass and a big swale.
Actually, that's a few good way.
So you are basically creating a footpath in the form of a bus shelter.
It's more just a hard stand area.
Yes,
So-
and if that is true, then coming to Jason's suggestion, why not do it on the Harewood Road, just west of Woolridge, which is what the residents suggested as well. It's. You
No,
can have
they're talking about the one on the other side.
The
that's
other
coming
side,
back
yes.
This way, next to the vineyard on there.
Yeah, so I've got some significant drainage issues there, and I have a potential to cause flooding issues to those residents because I need to look at the water flow that's coming off the road and at that bus stop as well.
All right, and David.
Just a point of clarity, Jason asked, is it a rule or is it a desire that we have the measure between bus stop and bus stop at a certain distance?
It's Wakakatahi guidance to say that we should.
So guidance, so we're not in trouble if we don't do it. I mean, they have a lot of guidance on a lot of things.
They do, but we have as a council legislative requirements to supply infrastructure for public transport.
However, with
To what level of standard that we choose is, up to us.
Would we be meeting, is this the only place in the city that we're not meeting it?
There are other locations where we need to install additional bus stops where there's gaps in our network, and we will be addressing that over the next six years.
So we've got 6 years.
All right. Okay, so we've got, so the way how the recommendations have been flowed is there's quite a few. I'm thinking, Jason, you sort of seem preempted to.
Could I make a couple of suggestions?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
The Tate one seems clear cut. I think from speaking to a couple of the other people around the board table that 317, like it's going to be an extremely low utilised stop, but we don't seem to see the need for the shelter at this point in time. So could I suggest that we move the stop at each end of Harewood Road, at each end of Woolridge Road, but without the shelter at the north end. The Harewood Road ones, I don't think Aaron.
So we should ask the question then on the platform.
Yeah.
It may not have the shelter.
The platform
but
without
can
the
you get
shelter.
you can still get on and off the bus at that point, like you would at the one halfway along, because there's no curb there, is there?
There's curbs at the mid-block.
On both sides.
On both sides, yes. It previously used to be a bus stop, and that's why we've got that indented infrastructure.
Resolutions and
work down.
I think that'd be quite helpful. And sorry, I do like your point.
Go.
Aidan, do you mind putting the resolutions up so we can work through them one by one? Page 47. Right, so we've got them here, so we'll go through, we'll call it resolution for part C1. How do we feel about this?
I don't think we're going to have any problems with that.
No? Okay. And should we move them independently or should we move them together again? Okay, all right, moving on to part C2.
I'll just speak on.
Yeah,
that
go for
one.
it, yeah.
So personally, I don't see the value in my personal view is I don't see the value in a stop at 281 and 280. None of the residents there have shown eagerness for it, and it's in a bit of a no man's land at the moment. We just don't have the population. I just don't see the value in it whatsoever. And if we are putting a stop in at each end, then I think that would service the park and the needs of the bus customers. So personally, I wouldn't support 280, 281.
So what would that look like if I mean, maybe I'll pause and see if there's anyone else that has any comments.
I agree with Jason.
Jason, okay. And so that would be C2 and C3. Okay.
So my question to the thing, just in defence of some of the answers the staff did make, though that midway block, that's literally just a sign and some paint on the ground. Is that not? Yeah, that's all that midway block is.
And
so if it doesn't get used, there's not a lot of harm. And if it does get used, we're proven wrong, and we can kind of go, oh well, you were right, there was an uptake. But is there that much harm in doing that midway block? Because it literally is the paint and the signs, eh?
Yes.
Because the curb's already there. So that was, so I'm just asking the table the question.
Yeah, and there is low cost option.
I would have thought there'd be uptake from the church, but the church feedback there wouldn't be, which is for me surprising. But
Yeah, if the residents weren't keen, I'd support that option in the mid block, but.
Can I speak? Oh, the consultation said 1 in support and 2 in objection.
1 in support, 2 in objection. So it's not like they got mouth.
Okay, Jeremy, sorry, I see your hand. Is it a point of clarification or is it just a point about what your opinion is on this?
Yeah, it's on even notice which one maybe help to think about a little bit more about the cost effective bus stop on the Woodridge Road 820 and the safety of the bikers when the bus is standing in the bus, and how long is a shadow place when especially that bus stop is planned next to our property. So when we will turn right to our driveway and the bus is just standing in the bus stop, and that one will be probably 150 or 200 meter shadow area for bikers which one are moving on the bikeway, or some people using the roller, and we won't able to see them when we turn to the driveway because of 200 meter or even longer shadow area. And that side of the road is 5 people in the 4 properties.
Yeah.
So what the company expect? How many people will use that bus stop? It is only 5 property. Sorry. Yes, it's 5 people.
Yeah. What's your name? What's your name? Sorry. Sorry, what's your name?
My name is Mickey. Mikko. I already told everything to the council. Before.
No, thank you.
But I just
thank you. Sorry.
How many people?
Sorry, I'm going to have to ask you. I appreciate you're passionate about this. We have taken the time for residents to speak on these matters. We give them the opportunity through deputation and through engagement to raise these points. This is information we're considering. We're now at the point where we're going through each of the different recommendations to see whether we're going to pass them or what amendments can be made. So I appreciate, we hear what you're saying, and that's information that we're going to be taking into account as we go through each resolution. Yes, thank you. Okay, just to regroup. So
just I wasn't sure if he's aware the bus doesn't ever stay there. It only ever stops if there's someone there or dropping off, and then it goes. So it would not be there for more than 20 seconds. 30 of signs, but generally.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all. I'm not sure that was clear to the gentleman.
Right.
I think we're clear on, we're probably going to strike those.
Strike those then. But do we want to make amendments though to any of these?
Well, I just looked at the map. So this is the plan for the cycleway. When you look here, down at the Waldridge Road, Harewoood Road intersection, it indicates there would be a footpath to go around the corner there where there's currently not. And then in the drawing there, coming off the footpath to the front and back of the bus and up to there's 2 bits of path. So the installation of that part and even the first bit of path would make sense versus the platform that we should support this, what that there looks like.
So we're proposing to construct this bus platform, but in the wheels.
It's on Harewoood Road.
On Harewoood Road.
And that doesn't clash, so I had a good look at that.
In the wheels to wings project. They are exploring the signalised intersection and a path to that bus stop in the future, but that is outside of my budget. So at the moment, I'm just proposing to install that section of that bus stop, so that we can have public transport infrastructure in there in the interim to future projects down the line. And the proposal that I'm taking to this board integrates with that future proposal and provides better walking and cycling in that area.
See, but it doesn't have, around here on Waldridge Road, at the top end, it doesn't have a platform, and our staff's in the drawing for the cycleway, but it does have a footpath connecting it, and then and you can get the turning bay. Everything else works. So the platform on Harewood Road works, and this, and the point the staff made around the drainage and that, so that makes sense. The platform, whether it has a shelter on it, I think that's the point of discussion. And then the stop around the corner by Woodridge Harewood Road needs those. It's got to have something that you can get off the bus and over to the footpath. So whether it's the platform or it's the two little ones, it's kind of got to have a minimum of that to meet our standard. Once again, I'm with Suresh about the shelter, but it needs to have the bit that the staff are saying.
That's fine.
So if we do all of that.
Okay, so how would you like that? How would you like that captured then, Aaron, with part C 2 and 3?
This here's got.
So
we have to ask a question on
the resolutions stay the same, except the shelter resolution drops off. And then that level of detail that Aaron's talking about, that comes into the detailed design work. So we can incorporate more green space between the two front doors and have two smaller hard stand areas.
By I think the gentleman from Hong Kong, is that rather than one giant piece of concrete platform there, do the two paths that work with the tactiles.
Yes, and that would reduce the cost of the project. We had that large platform there because of the shelter. So if that's taken off, then we can do a design similar to what was proposed when we integrated these designs into a future proposal for a cycleway.
And then look at the demand for the shelters.
Do we need to make that preference known, or can that just be part?
Do we need to make that preference known?
You can write it in the resolution, but it does just come down to the detail design work that designers do downstairs.
Right. I mean, it can't hurt to include.
No, I think just maybe include a sentence about the preference there.
Yeah.
Just for the.
We want to do the wording so the staff, when they see it, they understand it. But what we're trying to get to, which is like that.
Is for
it's not a water stroke since 16 years.
Is for a hard stand area to be provided for the front and the back door with green space. Like maintaining the existing verge in between, I guess. Would the board be happy if I installed seats at these two bus stops?
That seems to be a problem.
Oh, yeah, just like the chandeliers.
Shelter's the main.
I think, yeah, I mean,
the seat in this case would be back against the property boundary.
I'll just wait till everyone's around the table.
So many things.
Okay, Aaron. So one of the questions that staff just raised is, would we be comfortable as a board to pass that there be seats at the bus stops, but no shelters?
Well, if everyone else thinks there's a need for a seat.
Is
it not? Probably not, is there? Not at this
When you
stage.
get on a bus, I use the bus a lot. I've got kids and we love it, but you're going from one place to another. Will there be a lot of people, if there's only that small 5 houses, will there be people waiting? Do you?
Probably not.
I don't know. I mean, is it a waste of money? Because what if no one uses it? I don't know. I mean, I love the bus and I love.
What's the price of the thing?
It's about $2,000.
Well, as an example, number 3 route, which is connecting to the airport, it's a high frequency route. All along Bethel's Road, very few places have seats.
Yeah. Only what's the mall.
And it is a high density route.
All right, so,
Frequency.
so the seats that will be taken out, what is that? That's,
Do you think we should make
basically-
it?
I don't know.
Fine.
Are they quite?
Make it cool.
but we can make at least a comment and revisit.
So-
Review once demand.
With the seat thing, the reason the staff was saying is it's a transition, so there's 2 routes on the Heward Road part. So you might get someone get off one bus and gonna get on another. So that might be why you have a seat, because you might have a 5 or a 10-minute wait in between. So maybe we would put the seat on the Heward Road one.
Correct,
And then,
where there is
Oh,
the
yeah.
exchange, but not on the Woolridge.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, great.
All right, sorry.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't care, you're never getting on the bus.
You asked the quietest.
So are we putting a seat at 317? No.
No.
On Heward Road,
But we are.
where the platform's got to go in, the actual proper bit.
Okay, so that's 368, sorry, 638.
Heward Road, yeah.
And then does this one have shelters?
No, not yet. Let's see if there's demand.
So let's just regroup back to, we were going through each resolution. Jason, did you have anything? you
So no,
wanted-
317's fine.
Yeah.
With the note Aidan made, it's got no shelter and no seat.
Mhm.
So 317's good.
Okay, and then moving on to
638.
638.
Number 8 says putting in a shelter.
You want
Need more too.
the-
But a seat.
Yeah, so are we comfortable with that?
No shelter, but a seat.
No, it's just that the shelters are the dear part, but if there's demand, we're happy to,
Correct, and it will automatically trigger.
and especially if it's vulnerable people using it, like. No problems.
Okay, comfortable with that wording? Yeah, moving on to 588 Heward Road.
Yeah, that's the one on the north side of Hillwood Road, eh?
Yeah.
So that's coming back.
Yeah, that one. I don't think
That's the one
anyone
that has the platform and the seat.
Right, yeah, and then Numwood Park on Heward Road. Are we comfortable with this wording?
That's not contentious.
Yeah, happy?
Yeah.
Aaron, you seem not happy?
No, just double check.
Okay. All right, and then let's do that.
And that works.
Okay, yeah, we want to then put in a resolution that just says, we will revisit these sites to check demand and.
Well, hopefully he can do some checking
Yeah,
along the way, and if
that
they
happens.
tell us there's demand, then we'll
Yeah.
absolutely look at it, more than happy.
Because I think in the previous routes, it has happened automatically. You know, it
Yeah.
gets triggered based on the demand because they scan how many people come in.
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
All right, great, okay. Excellent, so we've got a range of different resolutions there. Is someone happy to move?
I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Shrish. Is there a second? Thanks, Sam. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against?
We're good.
No, carried, okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Can we get 125 back to airport? Rather than-
Oh, there are some discussions about that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for all your work on this. I know this has been a huge task. This is the third time it's come to the board, so we really appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
All right, moving on to item 12, we have the discretionary response fund. Lisa, Natalie.
Happy to move.
Is there anything you guys want to speak to this? Because I think we're all pretty comfortable with it. Yeah, cool. Okay. Okay, I'm happy to move. And Sam, have you second? Great. All those in favour say aye. Any against? Nope, carried. They noted. Item number 13.
Lisa, you've got a couple.
Hang on there, Lisa.
What is? Yes. Oh, God.
I'm happy to move.
Yeah.
Happy to second.
Yeah, okay, so that was Sam to
Take it as
move,
read.
James to, Jason, the second. All's in favour, say aye. Any against? Great. Oh, there's actually item number 14 as well.
Got another one, do you?
Badminton campaign.
Oh, the badminton.
So that was Sharish, move, and
We don't know.
That's over 350.
who would like to send item 14? I'm happy to.
I leave it kids down.
All right, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Item number 15, the community board area report.
Happy to take it as read. Any questions?
No,
Some really good stuff going on.
yeah, amazing.
Look at those cute children with their little watering cans. And a huge shout out to Terra Viva who gave us the little tiny kids gardening gloves and those watering cans. It was really good discount.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Lovely. Great. Well, I'm happy to move. We'll do David. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Carried. And then elected and members information exchange, item 16. All right, we'll do David.
One question. Is it compulsory for the likes of our team to be here through to the end? Or can we move the agenda items of all of these things which we pass in 2 minutes to the front of the agenda so they can make an item?
Yeah, it is normally, the funding stuff does tend to be right at the end of the agendas, so,
I mean, Bridget's call to.
change the agenda
item.
around, yeah.
So could we, even if it's still physically at the rear of the agenda, start each meeting with the thing and then boom, 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 go and done? Or is there a preference that they be here?
We can look at it case by case, like tonight when you've got lots of applications,
Yeah.
you want to do those reports first because the public are more important than staff waiting around.
Yeah.
But in other cases,
Yeah.
or they could zoom
it's
on.
efficiency and effectiveness.
Yeah.
Of these guys.
That's great. Yeah.
Well, you probably get paid for it, but or you get time and leave.
She lives in Poorah, so she's got a long way to go home.
Yeah, man, do you?
You just let us know what you'd like.
Yeah, I know. It's just a question.
All right,
Thanks, David.
yeah,
So,
Trish.
so feedback on Bishopdale Community Hall, which people love. I was there on Saturday night, the aircon switched off and we had no way to figure out how to switch it on. No switch, no display, nothing. So don't have to answer now. If you can let us know. And everyone had to wear jackets. Okay, we're there till 9 o'clock. Yeah, and I got blamed because my photo is there. Should I do something?
Yes, you're
I
fine.
don't know what to do.
One of them texts me and I said, is Sharish there? Let's hit him up.
Yeah.
All right, Jason.
Helplessness.
Yeah.
He's got the key.
Mine was around, so obviously we're trying to figure out whether the path is doable around the back of Shelter Park. Have we had any, there was some information going to come from the Papua New Guinea guys on where they got to? Can we follow up to see if that's arrived yet? Because I'll be quite keen to understand where they got to in that journey. Because when I was down there, like the idea is that the path is too close to the back of the rugby field so that, you score a try in the corner and slide onto the pavement and cheese grate yourself, but there is so much space at the other end of the rugby field. All you have to do is move the field markings 5 to 10 metres, quite easily doable, and then there's space down the back to have a gap between where the path and the rugby field would be. The lights can be realigned. Like there's no reason, you don't need to change any infrastructure whatsoever. Other than a 5 or 10 metre move to the side. I don't understand why that's so difficult.
I'll come back to you. The staff did come back.
Yeah, I was really keen to
They
understand
had
that.
looked at it before and there were reasons why it couldn't happen, so.
Yeah, And maybe it's just difficult hoops to jump through that may take a while, but don't think that's worth giving up
Yeah.
on.
Briefing may help.
Yeah, so we'll see what they, and I don't want to drag people in for a briefing it's not worth it, we've already got the information, but that was my main thing, I just can't follow up on.
I think the real pushback is because that encourages parents to drive their kids to school, park in that car park, they walk across the park. I truly believe that'll be their pushback. They won't say it, but it's our policy. Well,
anything else? Oh, sorry, Nicola, you got something to say?
No, just that, we've had a report from the, airport from our meeting, Linda and I are going to start to, share noise-related content with our, with our community. So that'll be, going to anticipate possibly some negative feedback as well as positive feedback, but that's just part of, the committee that we're on, and we hope to share with the people in the areas that we live so that they get an understanding of noise complaints, and it's been approved by the Airport Noise Liaison Committee as well. They're happy for us to do that.
Yeah. One other, well, maybe a question for the councillors. There's been, some of the residents have been concerned with the way that some of those deals are being done, where they're consenting to developers putting units and things on land, and then those units then getting on-sold to Waimāero and some of these other housing.
I'm going to raise that in just a minute.
Place. Yeah, and I'm like, is the council, from what you guys understand, the council was it just feels like a shady deal, but it's kind of, other than that.
It's smart by Waimāero, but
yeah,
it's.
Does the council do anything about that?
No, because it's not their development. And so they're bought one on Main North Road, just behind the Belfast Super Centre.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
So
about.
we've got a meeting at the Belfast Network next Monday. Belinda's organised it. So has she got hold of you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So you're going to go to it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's around that it's a Waimāero village, right? And it was over 60s units or whatever. And so these beautiful units are now going to be all. And I asked Waimāero, what's the makeup of your residents? Apparently all meant to be over 50s and so on and so forth. But it can go really bad if they don't manage it well. But they're doing it everywhere. It's happened in Horswell. It was on the radio the other day that they're buying half-finished developments, turning them into theirs. And it doesn't trigger that consent.
Waimāero and tomorrow.
Has
what time?
council legal got any guidance? Because if residents are signing up for something and giving their permission, but then the outcome is actually what they were signing up for.
Completely different.
Then does that not?
We'll raise it tomorrow when they're in. We'll ask our legal.
Because it's definitely a concern for the residents and our
Absolutely
over there. Just that the process that they've been had the wall pulled over their eyes. Yeah.
Well, it gives you time to sell, doesn't it? Before anyone else knows.
I've just got two things to raise. The first is Keep Christchurch Beautiful Awards are going to be open. So if you guys know of anyone in the community, specifically to do with the environment, then pass that through. They're also looking for volunteers. So if there's anyone around the board that would like to go check out some schools back there, if you'd like it. The other thing I want to raise is we got a memo back around Rastrick Street and Tombridge Street. So this is a bottleneck area that's sort of close to Mirabelle Corner. And staff have come back with a few options around how they could mitigate some of those traffic issues. With that memo, I'm kind of keen to actually get a more formalized report from staff and actually get some consultation done with the community around what would be the best option for them. Because we can come up with all these ideas, but we don't actually know what the community wants. So I'm just putting that out there. One of the things that the memo has put out is around one of the more pricier options has said to be funded by the community board, and that's we don't have the funds to do that, so I'm not sure how anyway, I guess it's just formalizing what these options are and getting some engagement back from the community. The next steps would be good.
Well, we've forgotten one thing. Did we need to pass a motion to get a staff report on Do we actually pass a motion on that?
It was in public forum and we don't do motions.
Oh, so
but
is
we-
it just a request?
It's a request.
Okay, we don't need to pass it. Okay.
Cool. All right. I will close the meeting then at 7:18 PM. Thank you so much.
We cut a hair to finish.
Sam, can I show you a quick photo?
Yep.
Of this is the Oranga Tamariki house.
That's right. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I don't know.